Should I? Okay, Joel, this is based at Swap. Should I talk about the forum?
Yeah, talk about the forum.
Okay, yeah, so I guess there's a few.
Okay, I think we are going to start. Okay, I think we're going to start, and we are going to start. Thanks everybody for joining us in person and online. We've got big crowd online as well. My name is Federica Duca, and I'm the academic engagement head here at PARI, and I'm really happy to welcome you all at today's second event in the Urban Crisis Seminar Series of this year. Just for a bit of context, this series is a collaboration between PARI, SWAP, GCRO School of Social Sciences at WITS, and the concerned academics at WITS. And the idea, which started a couple of years ago, was really to discuss all issues related to the urban crisis in Johannesburg. And this is our third year of the series. And we're building on our previous seminar series. We really turned the focus to the work and experiences of civil society organizations. And as Johannesburg continues to face intersecting crises of governance, service delivery, urban inequality, civil society organizations actually play a pivotal role in keeping local government accountable and in promoting innovative ways to respond to urban crises. So in this year's series, it's really civil society organizations that lead the conversation of this series, presenting their experiences, strategies, and challenges in navigating, obviously, urban crisis in Johannesburg. And we feel that this is particularly important also because at the light of the upcoming local government elections at the end of 2026. So particularly this series will focus on the relationship between civil society and local government. And we really want to discuss how the new strategies adopted by residents in navigating the crisis shape the relationship between residents and local institutions. Do new modalities of engagement and democratic practices emerge? And how civil society organizations bring new concerns to the public sphere? And what challenges do they have? And today, we expect at this light a very engaging conversation and exchange with a roundtable on civil society organizations contesting for local government elections. And we really want to discuss limitations, possibilities, opportunities, and challenges, as well as really going through experiences. So the roundtable, we hope, is going to provide a space for discussing civil society responses to the crisis in the city of Johannesburg, where we see a practical intervention of civil society in the local government political crisis through participating in elections as political parties. And as I said, we really think is an important conversation at the light of the elections. So we're very happy to have Masumbuko Jara as the chair of the event, Tessa Dooms, Peter Monete, and Simphiwe Zwane as participants in the roundtable. So without taking much more time from the discussion, I'm going to briefly introduce them, and then I'm going to hand over to Masumbuko, who's going to chair the conversation for about an hour, and then obviously we'll open up for a broader debate and discussion. So Tessa Dooms is an activist, author, and broadcaster committed to social justice, and she's a director of the Livonia Circle. She has 15 years experience as a development worker, trainer, and researcher with expertise on governance, youth development, and innovation. Peter Monete is a full-time labor union activist since 2013. He's also a founding member of the Abahlali-based Freedom Park and Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, organizations that advocate for decent housing in informal settlements. And then we have Simphiwe Zwane from Thembekile, who's an activist supporting the struggle of the poor, committed to social justice and building people's power. And Simphiwe has been an activist since grade 12, and she, in 2011, she was a member of the Operation Kenyisa movement that contested for election, and in 2016, she also became a ward councillor. So our chair, Masumbuko Jara, is currently the executive director of Zabalaza Pathways Institute. He's a popular educator, strategist, activist, commentator, and respected national and regional voice. With 3 decades of experience in deepening democracy, municipal reform, gender justice, and much more. So I'm just now going to hand over to you. You will facilitate the conversation, as I said, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Just before we start, just letting everyone know that we are recording this session and is now live streamed on YouTube. If there is no objection, we will keep the recording on. But if there is any objection, just please come talk to me at the end of this meeting. And yes, over to you, and I will circulate the mic when you guys have to talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Federica. Good afternoon to everyone. The table is not so round.
Try to.
But let's see how we all see each other and participate equally. For the first portion of the roundtable, I'll be in a conversation with my 3 colleagues, Simphiwe, Peter, and Tessa, and then later on open it up for engagement by everyone in the room. Are the ones online also able to ask questions?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, now good. Simphiwe, you are a former councillor of OKM in the city of Johannesburg from 2016 onwards. So this is not a new discussion for you, that social movements can contest elections, particularly at the level of the local state. I would like to start with a question to you. From that experience on 2016, what was the one useful lesson? What was the one negative challenge? So it's a question in two parts. Something which was a positive lesson, and also something which was a negative challenge that you'd like to share for us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name is Simpiwe. I'll start with the negative one. Operation Khanyisa and myself, we believed in the politics of socialism order left. It was a challenge for us to raise the concerns or the issues, or to talk in behalf of the poor inside the city council, because we all know that most of the political parties that are there, or most of the political parties that are the capitalist organizations. So obviously, most of the time when I'll be raising issues, they will take it as if I'm against them, not considering it as the concerns or the crisis within our communities. So it was like I'm against them. At some point, I'll be booed, like they'll boo me when I'm talking, raising the concerns. The good part is that I have learned a lot, and most of our people in our communities, they believe that the councillors have power and they can change um, things within their communities, like giving them houses and stuff, of which is something that myself, I was believing that. But when I was there, I saw that I don't have that power. And again, a good experience that I have gave to my communities, that when there was like council chamber meetings, I'll pay taxes, maybe two taxes from my salary, taking the community to the city council so that they can go there and see what their councillors are doing while they are there. Are they representing them, or what they are doing actually? So people, they saw them that at some point they will find the word councillor being sleeping inside there while there are issues that have been raised. They just there as a voting castles. Um, yeah, that is a good part. And the voice that I had, I can say I was the only party that were representing the poor there. And I made sure that I take the mandate from the community and come and raise it. So they'll come and see me, because I'll go to the council with their mandate and raising the issues or their crisis within their community. So that one, it was a good experience for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, you're raising this big issue. Do councillors, as individual councillors, have power to change big systems, big policies? That's something which I would like to throw at Peter and Tessa. With that experience that Simpiwe has, how do you propose to address this structural question as you campaign for this year's elections?
Okay, so there's no way I press.
No, no, you're
All right. Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, thanks, Comrade Mazibuko. I think, yeah, as Comrade Simpiwe already said, you don't have powers as a councillor. However, we had discussions, several discussions, since maybe late last year around these upcoming elections, because we really think that we have to have our voice in the city of Johannesburg, because I think things are really going down in a very bad way. So we we thought that in order for us to have a voice, there must be at least a few councillors that are coming from the civics or from the grassroots movements. So unlike in her time where she was just alone, I mean, her voice was just, they can only, I mean, quickly vote her out if she raised anything. But now our plan is that at least if we can have something like, I don't know, but a sizable number, 20, 30 councillors. And we think that it's possible according to Abakali Base Freedom Park and Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee. Simply because at the moment, I mean, as I speak to you today, yesterday, there was a very big march to the speaker where the communities were fighting that their councillors are not representing them, especially where there is development. There is a development of Golden Highway, Bara, all those. And then they are saying, no, councillors are giving their friends and the families businesses. So there is a lot. I mean, Madlanga Commission gave us, it opened our eyes that there is a lot that is happening behind the back doors. And so I think political parties are slowly losing, not even slowly, but they are losing, that trust from the communities. So as much as they are losing people, or if you go to just a person who's a civilian, a layman on the street, uh, they will tell you that no, we don't have option. I mean, you can say ANC is corrupt or DA is corrupt. What is alternative? No, EFF is the same. So they don't have a real voice that they can trust. So that is why we thought that if we can organize ourselves under the banner of the civics, there is that possibility. But it shouldn't. It needs a hard work. It shouldn't be just maybe Tembelihle or Freedom Park. It should be at least a sizable number of communities, so that we can challenge things as an organized. Yeah, I don't know, a sizable number. So that is our plan at the moment, and I think it's something that is very possible. However, there is also disadvantage when it comes to the civic movements. Remember, the political parties, I mean, they are competing with also who's having more budget, who can campaign better. Because sometimes campaigns, they really help. Because sometimes they will just go around and give everyone T-shirt, and that T-shirt is doing something. So with the civics, we don't have anything. It's a self-reliant. As Comrade Simpiwe is saying, she used to donate or give from her salary, give the comrades a taxi fare to come and attend at the COJ. So that's our disadvantage. We don't have enough resources or enough money to contest or to compete against the likes of ANC and the EFF who are sponsored. So yeah, that's what I was saying.
So you're raising this issue of a sizable number, some organized collective power. Well, the Makanda Citizens Front in Makanda had some kind of sizable power, some 5 councillors out of 28. So the question always was, once you've got that sizable number, what do you do with it? I'd like you to come back to that question, but not now. Let's take it to Tessa. So Tessa, given the constraints that both Simpiwe and Peter are raising, from a policy perspective, from a legislative perspective, what can be done? What is required to be changed to enable some radical change beyond the interest of political parties? Is it possible really to change how the municipal system works in ways that work for the people?
Yeah, thanks so much, Simpiwe and Peter, for setting, I think, important context. Mazibuko, to answer your second question first, I don't think that it is useful for us to talk about what legislative changes are necessary, because they're not going to happen. If you need a change in regulation or legislation that is going to allow power to devolve beyond political parties towards civics, etc., the political parties have no incentive to do that. So that is not, for me, the site of struggle here. The site of struggle is on the political culture side. What kind of political culture do we need to create in order to enable civic and citizen participation and contestation of power? And I think that's, for me, the more important question. And I'll return to it by addressing what the comrades have said. And no, we're not colleagues, we're comrades. There's a difference. There's a difference. So the first thing I want to say is I think that Peter is spot on about the need for civic caucuses as opposed to just individuals. So there's been a growing mythology about electoral reform in the country, that what civic movements want is electoral reform that produces independent candidature as the main outcome. That is incorrect. What people want and what civic groups want, and we can go as far back as the case in 2020, that was, I'm trying to remember the group that led it off by heart, but I can't, but it was led by a civic group in the Eastern Cape. And although what the court said was that the electoral act must be changed so that independent candidates can contest, they were always clear that what they were fighting for was direct elections. What they were fighting for was direct accountability and to remove some of the party power in terms of electoral participation and electoral accountability. That is not the same as saying we need to focus on independent candidates. It is saying that we need to focus on direct elections and direct accountability as a bigger part of our mix in terms of both legislation and political culture. And the reason why I bring that up is that in the case of Simphiwe sitting there by herself, that's an independent candidate type of situation, where you're just there by yourself, you are representing your community and your interest in isolation. Politics is a numbers game. We all know that. And so what Simphiwe needed was a caucus of people that she could work with. And we've seen it in the city of Joburg, the power of creating those caucuses. The Super 7 is an example of that. You can say what we want to about Al-Jama and other parties that are part of those 1 or 2 seat parties that have created the Super 7. This is 7 parties that have 2 or less seats. But they have gotten a speaker out of that deal. They've gotten 2 mayors out of that deal. That is a small collection of political interests and councillors that, because they organize themselves together and they determine what their agenda is, are getting their agenda to stand. The problem is their agenda is positions. It's not issues, it's not people, it's not people's power. What would it look like to have a caucus like that, that was about the ideals that Simphiwe stood for, that was about people's power, that was about the ideals and the ideas that we all believe are necessary? The second thing I want to say, especially in relation to what Simphiwe said about people's perceptions about what councillors' powers are. The sad part is that people have a growing perception that councillors have no power, and that is incorrect. Councillors' power at this point is being curtailed by political parties and their power, and political party bosses and their power, because we presume that the councillor's vote belongs to the party, and that whatever the party says, that's what the councillor has to do. We know that that is not legislatively true, especially for ward councillors. So let's do a thought experiment in the city of Joburg. The ANC has 90 councillors in the city of Joburg. Only 4 of those are PR councillors. The rest of them are ward councillors, which diminishes technically the ANC's power over those councillors. What holds those councillors in place is patronage politics. What holds those councillors beholden to the ANC is that they see this as a stepping stone to other positions that the ANC could get them. My point is that there is a real redefining of the role of the ward councillor. that I think this kind of politics can step into. The role of the ward councillor as taking away this idea that parties own all represented seats. Local government is the only place right now where there is a fair, real shot for people and communities to own council representation rather than political parties. And I think we need to think about that because there are powers there.
Okay.
There are powers to vote on budgets, there are powers to vote on mayors, and there are powers to have accountability that is not just protest, but has actual authority and teeth.
So what Tessa is putting forward is an example of how to change political culture beyond elite machinations in the boardroom of council. Simpiwe and Peter, I want to see if you want to take that idea forward. How do you connect what happens inside the council with actual community issues, with actual community struggles? Do you have any further ideas in that regard to concretize what Tessa is saying? So, for example, an implication of what Tessa is saying is reclaiming the ward. People in the ward actually saying, this is our ward, this is the kind of councillor we want, this is how we can hold them accountable. How do you propose to pin that political culture? Say you get your 5, your 10 councillors in November or January or whenever the elections take place.
Yeah, I hear you, Tessa. But when I said councillors they don't have powers, it's because we all know that we have those political parties, and there are majority and minorities within the council, and also believe that the Al Jama got whatever that they've got the offers. It's because of we saw that ANC is collapsing within the city of Joburg, but lesser than that, that was not going to happen. It's because now they had less power, so they had to come together and negotiate. But what is happening there in reality, like ANC was on majority. The people actually they will be speaking there in behalf of those ward councillors will be the MMCs. You know, um, before even the city the council starts, the meeting starts. There's a caucus of a mayor, and there are mayoral committees that they will caucus and they will come back into the council. Then we raise issues, and the MMC will be responding, not the councillors. The ward councillors are just um sorry to say, but I feel like at some point they are useless. Ugabon. According to me, sometimes I just think that why don't we do away with this thing of councillors? Then we use the street committees to represent the people within their communities. Yes, I believe that if we can organize or be organized and then have those numbers, we can have the 30, but obviously the rules there, we vote inside the council. So we can vote that 30 out. So if despite the good amendments that we are bringing, the 30, the good amendments that they are bringing within the council, but if those ones who has majority, they don't agree with you, then they'll vote those good amendments out. So
So Simpiwe, how does that change? Now there's no longer really one dominant party. So I think the picture changes somewhat with regards to numbers.
um yeah, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yes, the voices will be there, and it won't be the same as one, because now you stand to protest within the city, um, within the meeting, so that your voice can be at least be heard. Um, but nje,
So I think what Tessa was pointing to, the Super 7, even though they were a minority, but they were still able to push for particular political outcomes. And then, of course, she's making the critique that those were just outcomes in the interest of the parties. So now, could social movements, could civil society who contest play that numbers game in a much more radical, progressive way I'm not putting you in the corner. Think about it. But Peter, do you want to take it further to grapple with that?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, also maybe we shouldn't be demoralized, or we really have to work hard, because this is a matter of, life and death, and at the moment we are dying really because of these politicians. So we need to do something. So I mean, there's no solution. There was no solution, but uh, if we can go back to the basics, I mean, ever since maybe 1994, if I can take it from 1994, there was no community, or what you call participatory democracy, where people are really consulted. People are not consulted. Politicians just take decisions and do as they wish. But now the mechanism that we are trying to come up with is that we really need to go back to the basics, where we talk to our people. Everything, people on the ground must understand what exactly is happening, so that we don't take advantage of people not knowing, and we will just give them, feed them whatever that we can feed them. So the mass mobilization, community education, those little things, I think they are very important. But also these institutions that are not being used that much, they are there, like public protector's office. We don't normally go to the public protector's office. The speakers of the city, we don't go to the speakers and open the cases against people who are not doing the right things. For example, in Freedom Park, they once said they are building a library. It was like maybe the size of this room, or twice this room. It was library, and there was a serious budget. So all those things, imagine community will just squabble and say, hey, look at that library, how small it is, and they are not doing anything about it. So that is why I'm emphasizing the issue of us being organized, and not issues being known to only five leaders, because Comrade Peter and Comrade Simpiwe are leaders. It's five of them. They are the only ones who are aware of the issues. But even the community must be aware, so that it can challenge all these issues. So we can move parallel. All of us, we move together. So unlike where we are leaving people behind, so that's a vision for now, that when we are going through these elections, that is why on our we have drafted something, MOU, memorandum of understanding, but it's not yet finished. So we are still going to community by community, and on that MOU, at least we want communities to have public meetings, and community people's dialogue. Yeah, if I may put it, people's dialogue, where people will draft all these MOUs together and say, this is what must happen to our councillors when they are. The councillors must not just enjoy and be there, because that's how councillors are being co-opted, by the way. And then we want to move away from that co-option.
Okay. Now, to just deepen this discussion further, there are two questions that confronted the Makana Citizens Front with its 5 seats in that 28-seat council. What is the MCF agenda on service delivery? What are the concrete things the MCF is proposing to challenge and end corruption? I don't think the MCF ever really resolved that over the 5 years, that 2021 up to now, that they have had these 5 seats. That's an interesting challenge for me, because you are now right inside, but there are these two big things that you have to give a response to. Then the last example I want to bring is the Maluti Apofung 16 movement, MAP 16 in Puta de Chaba. They got 16 seats. I think it was similar size council, 28 or so council. They got the mayoral seats. They got a few seats in the local cabinet. Within 3 months, they had resolved the water crisis. For me, that's a very interesting one. That they went in there with an agenda and they used their numbers. So the MCF vis-a-vis MAP 16, I think, are two different experiences. How do you want to respond to those? Any one of you? What would be the agenda of movements, whatever the number, particularly on these two things, service delivery and corruption? What are the tactics? What are the strategy to really address those things in the context of Johannesburg?
Maybe I'll start it from a slightly different point of view. One is that we need to revisit what the role of a councillor and council is, in the same way that we need to revisit what the role of parliamentarians are, right? It's the people's parliament. It's not the political party's parliament. It's the people's parliament for the purposes of holding the executive to account. Where we are at the moment is that because we've left that entire space to politicians, there isn't accountability on service delivery, on the mandates that are given by all of those political parties, because it is parties holding parties accountable, not people holding parties accountable. So my first point would be, before you talk about what the issues are, it's what the role and function is. And the role of function of a councillor and council is to actually be the people's voice within council to hold the executive to account. Now, let's go with your first scenario where you assume that you're not going to, in the city of Joburg, get those executive positions. What you do is what the Patriotic Alliance has done. The Patriotic Alliance is one of my favorite examples politically in this country. And if you've spoken to me in the last 2 years, you'll know I talk about the PA a lot. Not because I agree with the PA or its proposition or its values, but because I have watched in Eldorado Park the way in which the PA has used councillors to both bring people back into electoral politics. My community was very disenfranchised when it came to electoral politics in Eldorado Park, but also to use the voice of councillors to very strategically either get resources directed in the direction of the community or platform the community's issues within whatever agenda is there. And that's the basis on which the community holds the councillors to account. So I do think that there is a role around accountability and setting the issues of the community, even from the point of just being a councillor in a minority position. But we must not make way to the idea that the MAP 16 is not possible. And I think that you have to go in with a proactive agenda. And I think that this is true for even big political parties, is that we're not seeing local government manifestos that actually have detailed proactive plans in their manifestos for the things that they will tackle. So you hear Helen Ziller giving you the 5 things that she's going to focus on. They are about as generic as something you could Google. Genuinely, we need to ask, what are the exact triggers that need to be pulled? And if you happen to go into a contest and you actually win that contest, God help you if you're not ready to win the contest, because I think that it's as important to have a proactive agenda as it is to have an accountability agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, with me, I'll talk from my experience. What we did, one, we made sure that as a PR counselor, I become a friend with the community. I become more closer to my community. Hence, I said even before, like I will never do the mistake that I'll go to a council without the mandate of the community. I cannot go inside the council and talk whatever that I want to talk of, you know. But the issues that I'll be raising there are the issues that have been raised by the community and in the public meeting. So, because every time when I'll go to the city council, also we'll have our community meeting. Then when my agenda comes, then I will check if the things that the community have said are they in the agenda, then so that I can pick that item to speak of. And another strategy that we 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 used, it was that we take these people with us, along with us, to the council meeting every time, and making sure that they they try to understand what is happening there, what is possible, what is not possible, so that's how we were trying to educate our community. And another thing, um Yes, I was alone, but I believe that because now I was a friend with my community, I felt at easy because I know that there are people behind me, you know. That is why at some point, I think it was 2011 where I was arrested for leading the march. So inside the city of Joburg, inside the council, they thought that I didn't understand or I didn't read the code of conduct, but I did, because I was there representing the people, even when um, they called me for the hard work committee. I had to tell them I didn't bring my CV to be here, but I came here with the vote of the people. So I'm representing people. I'll do whatever that people are saying. So that thing, Jay, for me, it was a strategy that we use, and it worked because people, they started believing in me, even if there was no delivery that I was giving to them, but because I'm close to them, and at some point they'll boo me, talking about that we want electricity at Tembelihle, but because of their support, I'll keep on saying that thing on and on. And finally, before 2016, it was announced that we are going to be electrified as Tembisa community. We're going to have electricity. So it was a victory for me and my community. And going back to the community saying, I didn't do it on my own, but us as a community, we did that. So the tricky part that when we go there, we need to be more closer to our community, to for them to trust us, you know. And even if we can't deliver, but at least they know the reasons. So it's easy for them rather than promising them or writing those manifestos. And at the end of the day, we are not going to deliver. You know, you were just writing the manifesto just to make your political party be unique or something. Yeah.
Peter, you have the last word.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I think my last input will be transparency and accountability. I think that one, that's where we also missing a lot of, you know, service delivery issues, because there is no transparency and there is no accountability. So if city of Johannesburg maybe, or even from the national during the budget speech, I'll give you an example with us in Freedom Park now, the mega housing development project of Southern Farms is something that we know that yes is coming. Okay, it has already started, but the fact that we know that our people won't get those houses the way we wish is something that is really yeah, it's terrifying, because when you think about it, you are representing people and you know that definitely there will be there won't be transparency there. We will say no, maybe we need to know people who will benefit, but we had some examples of experience of like Mutsualedi, where there was a new development and then they said no, because they are sitting on, or they are staying on a very wetland. It's a wetland and the government built houses for those people according to the numbers that people are staying there. And then after, instead of allocating the right people, nowadays I start calling my cousins and wara, you know, as officials. So there is no accountability there. Even the community can hold you accountability, because they are they are not aware what is happening. They are waiting for the day when they will get a phone call. But to their surprise, a phone call will just go to Simpiwe, go to Tessa, and then to me there is no phone call. That's when I start, and it's too late. So those shacks of Mutwaledi, they still remain. The community of Mutwaledi still remains there. Others, there's new people who got their houses there. So that's why I'm saying transparency and accountability from up to bottom or bottom up. Yeah, I'm not sure how will I put it, but yeah, we will need that, and to be at least be clear and understand everything. That okay, maybe city is planning this. What is it that exactly is being planned? But it must not be understood by 2 or 3 people, as I was saying, only leaders. It must be discussed by the community itself. All community members must discuss that you understand that there will be something like this, 1, 2, and 3. And then what is our strategy? So that the strategy will come from the people themselves. So yeah.
Thank you. It's time to open up the discussion to everyone. Power to councillors and power to change systems. The need to change political culture. The need to be proactive. The need to work in a dynamic way to derive mandates from below and to ensure that change is driven from below. Those are some of the ideas that have emerged. I'm naive about the scope and possibility from the legislative mandate. My interpretation of the law is that there's significant scope for effective public participation, for effective social auditing of budgets, but also even the mandate for local economic development. I have some naive belief that things could be possible, but please temper with my naivety, comrades. The other thing, which I think Peter just touched on now, is the impact of austerity on the local state. I want to see what questions arise in this direction, but also any other direction. Any takers? There's a first hand at the back. So as people speak, please just say your name and your institutional affiliation.
And also please use this mic.
Federica, is there a way to get more air in the room?
We've opened the
Richard. Okay. Okay.
Hello. Okay, is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Michelle van Mollendorf. I'm a concerned citizen, and actually, myself and this young lady who's 11 who wants to be a lawyer attended the council meeting at Mogale City yesterday. Now, I want to give you an idea of how dysfunctional it is. First of all, the councillors come in, they are all late. They waste 20 minutes on congratulating each other on all kinds of crap that I've never in my life heard of it. It was so dysfunctional. When we actually get to the actual meeting, the municipal manager bullies and puts through an adjusted budget that not one ward councillor has seen approved. It's illegal. Because we are now participants, we cannot actually discuss. And I know how it works in Mogale City because I'm someone who I will work with a ward councillor, but I don't want to be part of a political party. Number one, if you're part of, now I'm talking specifically, I've looked at the DA. Their ward councillors have to go run around and get signatures. What crap. You should be able to do an online petition. You should be able to talk to the media under no circumstance. If I want something done, I call 702. I'm so well known. If I say Michelle from Krugersdorp, they'll take my call anytime, day or night. A ward councillor has got 0, 0. There is no, your cheap party caucus whip has got, they sit in the front on the left hand side, and the people on the right or the MMC. It is so dysfunctional. You know that I actually will not waste my time. It's a case of let's change the law, let's stop buggering around with it. And I'd like to give this young lady just, can you give her 2 minutes to give her reflection of what she experienced as an 11-year-old, what she saw yesterday? Is that fine? Can we do
What
that?
is your name, Susan?
My name is Michelle
No,
van
no,
Mollendorf.
and-
Oh, okay. Hold, stand up, Fanu.
My name's Fana Paswa.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So yesterday we went to the council meeting. So they were talking about putting the budgets for water higher. And I say that it's wrong for all of us to put budgets for water higher. For my reasons that I'm saying this is that most of us pay a lot, and councils sometimes use most of our money for stuff such as, I don't know, most of the stuff. And if you pass most of our streets, you'll see potholes and a lot of damage to our streets. And the councillors look at they see that there's something wrong with the streets, but they hadn't had the audacity to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw hands this direction, Claire. But please introduce yourself. There is the little microphone.
Sure. I'm Claire. I'm in the political studies department at the moment. So, but speaking in my personal capacity. So, the question I wanted to put forward, if you look at I mean, I think Mazibuko, you can answer your own disillusionment by what Peter said about austerity. And that seems to me to be the problem, is that isn't it that the dysfunction follows the form of councillors that have nothing to do, because austerity has been the norm actually since 1994. So transparency and all of those things are important and good to fight for, but obviously they're not the end of the road for us. And that brings me to the question then about the Super 7. Isn't it that to some extent they were able to achieve their things not because of technique, but because what they were trying to achieve doesn't overflow the bounds of austerity and of the institutions, right? That there's limits to the extent of democracy that you can have in institutions that work the way ours do. I think it's not accidental that councillors end up not being controlled from below. So I'm just asking, how do we deal with that fact? And shouldn't we be, using elections rather to poke at the cracks and start thinking about different ways to do democracy rather than what little we can squeeze? I think we should squeeze everything we can out of here, but I think there's that. We very quickly overflow that with our agendas, which go far beyond, those Super 7 agendas and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, to the front here.
No, thanks. My name is Lisa Seth. I'm part of the Johannesburg Crisis Alliance. So I've got maybe one question, maybe you're able to answer it, Chair, which is, what happened with the Makanda 5 and the MAP 16? Are they still in power? Did they succeed? If I recall, particularly the MAP 16 are no longer in power. Did they get corrupted by being in power and became no different from a political party? I seem to recollect something like that, but it would be useful to explore that, because we should be talking about not only getting in, but once we're getting in, how do you sustain something, which I think has been, your challenge. And then I think my second, and maybe it's a provocation or maybe it's something to explore, is that, Tessa says, the thing is, it's that we leave the things to political parties, and the people should be holding the political parties to account. The reality is that if you come through a political party, there is very strong cultures in almost all political parties that you've got to vote with the political party. You've got to be part of the caucus. Yes, you can influence the caucus, and you can have a caucus within a caucus, sometimes, which is quite powerful. But at the end of the day, and we saw it in the ANC when they had to vote against Zuma and so on, you are out. So how do you break that, particularly for ward councillors? How can ward councillors use their relationship with the people, as you say, being a friend of the people, to assert power within a political party when they are so beholden to it? And then, maybe Peter, if you go in as a group of civics, but you have to register as a political party, what would you do differently within the structures of your caucus or your structure, whatever, that would, that wouldn't lead to the same problem that political parties face? Thanks.
Thank you. Noor? And then after, there's someone behind you. And then after these hands, I want to see if they're, yeah, okay.
Thanks, Mazibuko. I'm Noor from I wasn't sure which hat I have to announce. Let's just say Wits University. You know, so this discussion is really fantastic. But I feel like I have a sense of deja vu. No? Every 5 years, as we approach local elections, then we have the same conversations. And those conversations are important, and we need to kind of draw on the lessons of various organizations, movements, people who think through policy, identify potential areas where we can make the councils work better, make the councillors more accountable. So I'm all for that. But I'm worried, you know, that we're posing the same questions, that we're coming up with similar approaches and answers to the questions that we pose. And it seems to me, one, and some people have raised this already or implied this, we have an opportunity with the unraveling of the hegemony of the ANC. It means that, broadly speaking, although if you take the Western Cape, this may not apply, that there's no longer a single dominant party, and that creates opportunities to think differently. I'm very interested in the PA example, and maybe you can say more about that, notwithstanding the politics, but the modus operandi, which I think is important. What I would like us to think about, and maybe not possible in this conversation, is, and Tetsa, you'll be familiar with this because of the water campaign. What if we took a different approach to the conversation? That is, we ask ourselves, how do we resolve the crisis of water? What do we need to do? Instead of focusing the conversation mostly on the council matters, accountability, and I'm not saying those issues are unimportant. They are critically important. But if we were to focus on a campaign like that and said, what do we need to do in the ecosystem? For me, the ecosystem includes social movements, councillors, ward committees, the state, okay? And what I mean by that, the different parts of the state, and the council as a chamber where the executive is meant to be held accountable. Now, why am I saying that? Mazibuko, I'll make these points very quickly because I'm not a speaker, okay?
For your penultimate point.
Okay, some of the comrades know me well, okay? I haven't come to the penultimate point yet, okay? So, one of my concerns, very briefly, is that we are known as the protest capital of the world. My sense is that most of those protests have no sense about how to engage the state in a sustainable way, okay? So when you campaign for water as a movement, what do you do after you've protested in relation to the state? I don't think that is discussed by movements, okay? And for me, if we were to think about a campaign, how do we execute a campaign, not just to organize a march, but over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? I think if we were to have that kind of conversation, then potentially the kinds of issues that we're raising about accountability, about councils, about, you know, how we hold ward committees accountable may be addressed differently. I'm not saying it will resolve the questions, but maybe a different kind of conversation. But I'll
Thank
stop
you.
there.
There's a hand at the back. I know it's a lot of hands, but no, we'll come back. I think there could be a synthesis. That's possible. Yeah.
My name's Ewan. Firstly, I'm a student at WITS, and then secondly, I'm the policy director for a student-led voting organization called So We Vote. But my question is, I was talking to, I don't know if he's the CEO or the COO of SALGA, of South African Local Government Association. And he said the biggest issue they have is that every 5 years they get a new group of councillors in that really want to change things. They realize that they can't, they leave, and they lose all of their institutional knowledge. So every 5 years, they say they've got almost 60 to 70% of the old councillors leaving and not coming back, and they lose how to run councils, you know, over and over and over again. So my question is, how do we change, maybe through civil society, at maintaining that institutional knowledge?
Sia, then Dave. Sorry, Dave. You. Okay.
Okay. Molweni maqabane. Igama lam ndinguSiya. Ndisukaphi? Ndinguqabane qha ngasitsho. I think mine, Comrade Peter, comes from a pessimistic point of view, because I don't think we can contest successful councilship as popular movement without face talking to the structure and how municipalities themselves are made to fail. So are made to fail by how they are structured in themselves in so many ways. One, there's this Operation Vulindlela that's going on steroids to ensure that even water and electricity are privatized. And communities themselves must pay for services, basic services. So, I mean, in this recent budget speech, by the way, this trading scheme that Kodongwana has allocated about 27.7 billion borrowed from the World Bank for actually smart meters. If you're using a smart meter, and you're consuming water and you're not paying for it, automatically it stops. Same with electricity. And with this, by the way, being met also with a policy that's in the AMFA to say, and now has also been put up to say, if municipalities don't have a clear business plan around how they gonna run their municipalities, how they gonna fix, how they gonna collect revenue from the people, they're not gonna receive this conditional grant. And that is met with something very serious. And it's met by those who are not able to pay for these services, are then forgotten, are then left, then bear the most serious brunt out of this. And middle class, wealthy suburbs, like the one we're in now, tend to benefit from this system. Now, then that speaks to and Treasury has done this. They've allocated just a certain portion, little portion, 10% of its budget goes to municipalities, and that's telling. Now, if there's no contestation of that, if there's no contestation of how municipalities are run and corporates, and how, and this besides, I'm closing down, Comrade Mazli, and this is besides this indigent policy, because with the indigent policy in itself, you must practice, you must perform, you must prove how poor you are to access these indigent policies and to access these indigent grants. So until we focus and we fight against the structure and the setup of municipalities, and until our struggles are concentrated and are concentrated on fighting the structure of how the setup of municipalities are, then we'll have councillors, we put councillors, they'll struggle because they would be swallowed by what has been manufactured.
Dave, you are the last one.
Yeah, my name's David Lewis. The HSRC have just brought out a really interesting, very large survey on voter participation in South Africa, and which I've just skimmed. I just saw it this morning for the first time. And the results are really interesting. I mean, firstly, confidence in the democratic system of government has plummeted. In fact, another survey that I read, an international survey that was done a couple of years ago, showed that in no country had confidence in democracy plummeted further or by a larger amount than in South Africa. And going to Tessa's point, the least trusted people and institutions in the country are politicians and political institutions. I mean, less than the police, which is quite surprising. But they are the least trusted people in the country, and it's not this is not doesn't only affect South Africa. I mean, South Africa is near the bottom of the league, but in every single country, the failure of political parties underlies what the problems of that country are, from the United States to Zimbabwe. But including France, England, there is political parties are not functioning anything like the manner in which they were intended to function in order to serve a democratic society. And so what do you do about that? I mean, I think I'm surprised that because of this, there hasn't arisen across the world, in fact, a demand for the regulation of political parties. At the moment, political parties are treated as voluntary associations, so they're regulated in the same way that the tennis club in Parkview is regulated, and yet they have enormous power over all of our lives. The problem, and I think, were they to be regulated, the first thing to look at is the quality, is a minimum quality for your representatives. I mean, and there are a lot of controversial questions there. Is education one of the qualifications? How do you measure integrity? They're difficult questions, but these institutions have to be regulated. And nowhere in the world are they, as far as I can see, regulated. But it seems to me, and I feel the same way about a lot of Tessa's proposals, most of which I agree with, that getting them to change is like asking the turkeys to vote for Christmas, literally. Um, and I just don't see the kind of path, short of a revolution, which I'm not necessarily advocating, but I don't see I'm not sure it would succeed. I don't see a path to getting to those who have the power, whether in the executive or the legislature, to make those changes, other than on the street. And we win our water demands and those sorts of things only when we go out into the street, really, or go to the court and get a favorable judgment from the courts.
Thanks, Dave. I see there are a few more hands, but I'll ask that they hold for now. The last question for now will be the one read out from the online question.
Sure. I'm just briefly standing in for Federica. There's a few comments here. The first one says, one simple legislative change, not viable in the short term and with no political support, would be to remove the ward votes from the PR seat allocation in municipalities. Voters could vote for independents or community candidates in the ward without depriving their party of the half vote in the PR calculations. Parties would not need to contest in every ward. This would create more meaningful ward elections with fewer candidates. It could adjust the relationship between ward councillors and their communities. Then there's another comment here that says there is a great trend on interests of civil society organizations to take part in local government elections. This is not the first time hearing about CSO interest in contesting elections. Possibilities. It is possible if the CSO register under the banner of a political party or independent candidates. Limitations in this case, contesting councilorships, seem impossible for civil society organizations because of how the council looks like. It is ruled on majority rule when approving council items. However, I have one question to the CSOs in the House interested in taking a stand for local government elections. What are the mobilization strategies and funding models? What are the mobilization strategies and funding models they are intending to employ? And then the last one says, the main challenge is that there are many political parties which defeat the noble idea of democracy. I don't think civic organizations should contest for local government elections, but they should mobilize and strengthen community engagement and participation and hold elected councillors to account. Civic organizations can also use existing community participation platforms like ward committees to ensure that they are depoliticized and focus on service delivery. And then there's just one last comment from Kate, Kate Tissington, who's a PARI researcher, just drawing everyone's attention to the fact that PARI and SALGA have developed civic education materials on local government, including a guide and pamphlet series that are available on our website.
Thank you. Peter, Simpiwe, Tessa, the board is in your court. Please see if you can take about 3 questions as one person and then throw it to the next speaker. At the end, I will try and see how we cover those that are not covered in your responses. Anyone can start.
One, we had, as an Operation Khanyisa movement, we had something that we called a pledge that we use to hold our councillor accountable with, that has been signed in public before you even go into the council. And obviously the agreement, it was that if we are no longer able to do the things that were in a pledge, it's sort of a contract, then we can withdraw you as a councillor and replace you. So with that, we're trying to encourage the councillors that we have, or we are going to have, that they must work with the community and work for the community. That's how we were trying to hold them accountable, actually. And also, I will agree with Comrade Noor. For us, at some point, I just feel like we just need to strengthen our local struggles. We need to champion our struggle on the ground first before we even think of going to the elections. And another thing that I've picked up that make us as civil society to lose is that we focus, like now Peter is talking about Abahlali Base Freedom Park. They're going to be focused on Abahlali Base Freedom Park, not on based on a ward. Remember that I'm at Tembelihle, I'm staying at Tembelihle. The community struggle that I champion, it's at Tembelihle, but I'm not knowing what is happening at Lodi. And at Lodi, they don't know me. Hence, it's very difficult for us to get more seats or even win the wards. Most of this civil society, we go in as an PR councillors. That is a challenge that we need to look at going forward. And when I said I agree with Comrade Noor, I believe that like right now, we have the crisis of water. And the way I see it, it unites us as one, black or white, because at some point we used to, when we were doing the protests at Tembelihle, you'll hear people saying, those people are hooligans, they don't know what they want, those kind of stories. But now it's water. Everyone needs water. There's a challenge. Everyone is in struggle. We see people, different people with the buckets, some whatsoever on the street, because it's so painful. So I think this is the opportunity for us to take wherever we are, so that if we are thinking really to contest as a civil society, that we take this, we champion that, and we need to have resolutions at the end of the day. When we are having this challenge, how are we going to solve this? What is needed, what we are going to do. Okay. Yeah, and another challenge that I'm seeing with us going into the election is this borders. We are focusing on these big borders that have been made Limbomba border, Warawara border, and Warawara. But the borders that are within our communities that have been created, no one is saying anything about it. When it comes to ward things, this is the ward 8, this is ward 9, but we are living in the same area, just we are divided by the road. I think that one is another challenge that we need to take on. Because that's how they rig the election. That's how they divide us. Actually, since they rule, it's divide and rule. You know, my neighbor is at Ward 9. I'm here at Ward 8. Those kind of things. But all in all, I believe that if really the civil society can mobilize and do their planning and draft their, whether it's pledge or manifesto, but not based on lies, they can do great because already they are on the ground, you know?
Take lies out of politics. What a novel idea. I want to start off with Dave's point and weave it in with Noor asking me to speak about the PA more. Why did Donald Trump enter into politics successfully? Because he came in on the bandwagon that he's not a politician. And that's because of those stats that you're talking about, Dave. That people are tired of career politicians and that the political industrial complex, as it were, has become about this very particular place for career politicians, elites, that we all know what that looks like. And people want to bypass that. Yesterday, I was sitting with two community activists in Atteridgeville who have been community leaders in various forms for the last 26 years or so within their communities. They can track back their organizing in Atteridgeville to the day that they started a CPF, right? And across that time, they tell story upon story about story about being co-opted by political parties. And neither one of those people has ever been a councillor, neither PR or ward. They've been organizers for political parties. They've been co-opted. They've been given money, taken money away, all of those things. The only thing that has endured is that their community still trusts them, that their community still come to them for those issues. Those two people, one of them had 48 messages on his phone just in the 2 hours that I sat with him. That's a ward councillor. That's a real ward councillor. And so to fall for the trap that elected representation is only for career politicians who are in political parties, I think is the thing that we need to expose and ride on. That we need to make politics about more than political parties and career politicians if we are going to get people back in. I had a conversation in Alexandria 2 months ago. And in Alex, the conversation started off with people are tired of democracy. They don't think democracy's worked. They think democracy has failed. And as we went on in the conversation, and we said, well, democracy is about the people shall govern themselves. They said, well, then the democracy hasn't failed. It's who the people are that has failed. And that we have said that the people now only is limited to those who are willing to go into political parties. And it is about challenging those narratives. And I think there's something powerful about that, that says that direct democracy is not just about direct voting. It is about that participatory democracy having real teeth and real power. And that's why I think the participation in electoral politics through the civic space is important. One of the things about the PA that is a little focused is that the PA grew not because of Gayton's popularity or because of their ideology. They grew because they built their own voter base by taking ordinary community activists and turning them into first-time politicians. So when you see those people like Ashley Sauls was not in politics at all. He was brought in by the PA, made a candidate, and the community supported him because of his community activism. And the PA supported the campaign in terms of resources and those kinds of things. But that's how the PA grew, from a 20,000 vote party in 2019 to a 300,000 vote party 5 years later. Because in 2020 and 2021, that's what they did differently. They went and found community activists and just said, we are going to back the community activists that this community wants. That was it. That was it. That's the whole of the story. And the PA's crisis at the moment is that a lot of people in the PA are torn because they're actually progressive people who are stuck with conservative politics because that was the only party willing to back their local leaders to actually have a voice in parliament. And so I want to wrap this point up by saying, even across the world, what we're seeing, Noor, in terms of the ability to take a single issue and make it this wholesale thing is a commitment to dual power. It's to not shy away from represented power, even though we want to keep civic power. We have to do both, and we have to do both well and integrated. And that also then speaks a little bit to the question about how do we get people back into the vote? In a local government election, this is the lowest threshold for getting voters back in. You have about 4,000 people at most who are registered in a ward. That is the lowest threshold to win an election in this country, 2,000 people. We can support local communities to get 2,000 people over the line. And the trick is not to focus on how do we shift ANC voters to vote for the civic candidate, but how do we get people who have never voted before, the young people that So We Vote is trying to get to vote, into the system. Because again, how did MAGA politics thrive? By getting new voters, not shifting old voters. The political parties, all of them except two, and the second one only joined the race this week, are not going to do voter registration campaigns. The two that are the Patriotic Alliance. They've been doing a voter registration campaign for the last 2 months. And now the EFF has joined because the EFF needs young people. That's its core base. The others are not going to do that voter registration because they are trying to keep people out. The fewer people vote, the better for the established political parties. That's again where there's an opportunity for the civics. And then the last point I want to make is around the legislative battles. And there's some really interesting ideas around legislative things that need to happen. What is important to realize is that local government contestation is not just fought at the local government level, it's also fought at the national policy level and the national legislation level. And so there's the white paper, there's the municipal structures bill, where we may not be able to change how people vote through those bills, but things like how municipalities are funded, that is a national government fight. And so we actually have to be asking ourselves, how do we also make sure that we get national government parties that have some sway to take on the fight for restructuring the way that municipalities are funded, for example, or whatever those things are. But the only way we're going to do that is by building local power first. And so you build local power so that you can go and fight national battles.
All right. Yeah. I think there was a lot of questions, and all of them are very relevant. So, yeah, we will reference to you, Comrade Noor. I think I take it as a critique to the movements. Like after every march, we will have normally in Gauteng South, not just in Freedom Park. When we have a march, we will have reflections of the march, looking at the negative and the positive, what happened, did we achieve what we were marching for, and but it will end there. So what you are saying is you are on point. I think we need to have a long view to say, okay, they maybe yes, they answered us after 7 days. However, it was just a verbal, written email to say, we will do this, and it was not done, or it was just a promise. So we need to have something that a real plan to say, okay, how do we really achieve this? It should not end by only marching. But also, I wrote something here about coalition building, that CSOs often form alliances across diverse groups to amplify collective demands. Coalitions strengthen the civic voice and build long-term democratic culture. Yet coordination can be challenging, and there is a risk of diluting focus when too many agendas are combined. So I was speaking to exactly that point, where like we really need to have this coalition of different communities and movements. However, we find ourselves where maybe towards achieving something, we can have a lot of commonalities, 100 commonalities, but only will differ with the 99 one or the 100 one, and then that will kill everything that we were planning. That is our reality. Yes, we understand the truth is that we need to work together, but reality sometimes it's just those Morangana thing. But also, we must not be naive that as we are organizing, the capitalists are just looking at us and saying, you are organizing. They are also planning how can we disrupt them. This character looks like she likes things, and then yeah, let's and then so there is also that kind of element. Is either sometimes I mean the choice. I'm talking from an experience where comrades were like called to a meeting, and they said we opened a case actually with a human settlement after they built 8,000 houses in Freedom Park, and those 8,000 there was a lot of corruption in those houses. Then thereafter, we opened a case with public protector, and then we wanted a what is this forensic investigation, and the human settlement, it was Mama Bolo at that time, Jacob Mama Bolo. We spoke with Jacob Mama Bolo and they appointed a company to do a forensic investigation, Season Saluba Pogot or something like that. And that company, we even said to the company, they said, no, we're going to start the forensic investigation. After a few days, there was a meeting that a few of our comrades were called to. And they were given alternative to say, no, it's either you take the money or you take a bullet. And it's an official meeting with the government officials. So the comrades came back and they were really frightened. Like, no, now we are really confused. We don't know. And those guys, they know everything about them. They know all the information. So we had to see. But guns to protect our comrades, we don't have. But we can't say no, take the money also. We kept on insisting to say, no, if you die, we will bury you, comrade. And, so it's really difficult for us. That's why I'm saying we should also be careful that as much as we organize, we must be careful that there is people who are really organizing against us also. So yeah, that's the difficulty of it.
Thanks to the panel. In a way, I've also been asked some questions, even though I'm not a panelist. I hope I don't stray too far. So you're right, Lisa. The ANC outmaneuvered the MEP 16 because that number they had was not the majority. They had to go into a coalition. By nature of coalition politics, the other members of the coalition moved over. But remember also the MEP 16 comrades are ANC creatures themselves. So they also had those features. For example, last year, when Floyd started his My Way thing, he was still in MK actually. He went to Peter Chaba and claimed to have met MEP 16 and that they've agreed to join MK. But of course, that was contested within. So that instability is a factor when it comes to MEP 16. MCF, so the MCF was formed by the Unemployed People's Movement together with the SGBs, together with the Anti-Crime Forum and other local actors in Makanda. But in that broadness of the MCF, there were then internal contestations, which then displaced the Unemployed People's Movement in favor of a range of people. Some of them were in the ANC Communist Party, some of them were in the Suburban Ratepayers Associations and other groupings. So now the people in power in the MCF are the latter grouping who displaced the UPM. and so that they still occupy the 5 seats. Um, it's unclear to me what will happen in the run-up to the coming elections, whether that contestation will continue. I know the UPM is discussing what it should do now that it has been displaced out of the MCF. The MCF grouping that is in power is very interesting because actually they are very active in the old way of civic activism. Um, where they table council issues at public meetings. They are even campaigning and even taking public opportunities to people in the townships, for example, opportunities offered by the city. So that's a very interesting flavor, which I think they are using basically to continue to displace the UPM. But that's the nature of these contested spaces. Yeah. Look, there's a whole range of other issues that have come up. For me, I think ultimately it goes back to what is emerging from the panel. How do we build, in a proactive way, the power of ordinary people? Whether they take back the word, whether they hold officials and councillors accountable, or whether they actually have a sustained strategy to get issues resolved, such as the water issue that Noor was raising. And then Noor, for me, I have a fascination with 3 letters, WBA, with the state, beyond the state, and against the state. I don't think we've concretized that in a real way beyond what we saw with the TAC, glimpses of it in what Abahlali baseMjondolo are doing, even what you comrades Peter are doing by winning the rapid land release program with the Gauteng government. You push the state, you're working with the state, but you also want to go beyond what the state is offering. So I think for me, that's the question. How do we build confidence and capacity? How do we change the political culture from below, as Tessa was saying, so that we sustain these things, we see it through in a real way. I think that's where there's some weakness on the part of popular movements in that regard. Sia, your experience in Gqeberha with the Water Crisis Committee, you campaigned, you raised the issues. How far did you go to see it through, such that the issue is ultimately resolved in a way that builds confidence? I think the point you're raising, Noor, about seeing it through is also about building confidence. With a victory, the eyes get opened wider and people can see possibilities for further solutions. That's how far I'll go in straying far with the conversation. We still have some 20 minutes to conclude. Before you, there was a hand here. Sister, you have not forgotten okay. And then, yeah.
Wow, this looks cute.
No, it's not for amplifying your voice. It's just to capture it.
Um, uh, oh, sorry. I just want to say that my take is that I don't think it's a good idea that we as civic movements should start wanting to be councillors, because councillors are very powerless in the legislature. You're going to find yourself where the people are going to complain to you and hope for the best, and you are not going to be able to take those complaints further, and that's not going to help anybody. But if you stay on this side, you are able to motivate the masses, you are able to tell people to go in toy toy, you are able to influence anything you can with the people. That's point number 1. Unless you say the civic movements must up their game in such a way that they become political parties. I don't know whether that's possible. Otherwise, to say that we have to join the government, it's not going to work as far as I'm concerned. The second thing is that we should work harder to consolidate what we are right now, make ourselves more powerful, and definitely look for other ways of protesting. Toy-toying is not going to work anymore. It's not working. Because the people are toy-toying to have also been toy-toying some years back before they became fat cats. So it doesn't touch them really. I think we should be more radical now. Something like
let's not all pay our bills for the next 3 months so that they don't get paid. Something more radical like that. Otherwise, toying, I don't think so.
Thank you. There was, I forgot your name, but you said you're from Krugersdorp. Michelle from Krugersdorp. We shall now call you that as if we are 702.
But it's Michelle from Mohali.
I see.
Funny. Okay. Just a reflection. I used to work for many years for a telecommunications company, and we always used to be very well entrenched with SALGA. So I know how SALGA works, and for example, most ward councillors don't even know that there is something called MISA, the Municipal Infrastructure Service Agency. Now, you have ward councillors sitting deciding on what they need to do about a water tower that's crumbling. Number one, they're not engineers. Stereotypically enough, some of these they can't even read and write. Okay, so you have to send them to Abbott. That's where we come from historically. Understand it. Currently in Krugersdorp, they've got all the councillors doing a basic elementary course so they can understand what is ethics, what is how to read a balance sheet, and all the rest. Good. SALGA proposed this 15 years ago. What are the councillors doing? Or at least the political parties. And I honestly think at the end of the day, the political parties are like a church. It's like the unregulated church industry in this country. You can come and you can say any banner of I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 in the next, and people will vote for you. Technically, how are you being held accountable? Yes, with the vote at the end of for 5 years, you are now, your proximity to power means that you can allocate tenders. And this is how it goes in Krugersdorp. To get the grass cut in the park next door to us, they appoint one vendor who uses the council to cut that lawn. Another vendor comes and does the weed eating, and another vendor comes and cuts the verges on the road where the grass has grown into the road. Another vendor will come and trim the trees. Absolute SH1T. There is no other word to say it. And I can tell you now, as being someone who is an activist, I would never join a political party. I will help them campaign and do all kinds of things, but join them and stand for them. No, because that's when you lose your power. You have absolute loss of power. Whatever your political, whether you're a yellow t-shirt, a green t-shirt, or you're in Helen Zille's DA, they get a lot done. But at the end of the day, if you're a ward councillor in that organization, you've got zero speaking value.
Okay. Thank you. And any further hands? Was there any? They were read earlier. Is there a new one? One more. Okay, please go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Lindel Sembuli. I actually work for the city of Johannesburg. I've been a permanent employee there since 2019. Ouch. Okay. However, I'm here just as a curious person, as a lover of knowledge, and as a contributor of knowledge. I would like to thank the Public Affairs Research Institute, honestly, for always creating these platforms and, captivating the mind. It's very, yeah, I'm grateful for that. So, regarding this topic, I'm really concerned with how in South Africa generally, it seems as if we are more driven towards personality politics as opposed to how many people are reading manifestos of these political parties from the jump, just from the jump, before elections, to just say, I know the EFF, for instance, the 7 cardinal pillars, like how many of us or how many residents are conscious of the party manifestos? So it really seems like they are getting away with a lot just because of the personalities that they put in front. It's more of the personalities than actually what the parties stand for. So it's hard to hold them accountable in that regard. So also the position with locals and what is happening um in nationally and things like that. I think there's a lot of disjuncture between
the leaders and what is actually happening on the ground. I like what Umama was saying about bringing the communities to council. There is that opportunity actually of there is like a gallery there where the citizens can come, and notices are always given to say the speaker is calling for the 44th or 34th ordinary or extraordinary, and they're inviting media houses, people, but people are disfranchised. And that one I would definitely like to concede. So yes, the conversation is how do we bring in new voters? I think that is very credible because we can't keep on regurgitating the same thing as the gentleman from Verts was saying. To say it sounds like an old song, we just get hyped up whenever there are politics, but on a day-to-day basis, what do we do to actually change what we've seen in the past elections? How do we change it, from the results, from the day the results come up until the new elections and this no momentum? So yeah, for now, I think that will be my contribution to just say I love the conversation, and definitely yes, there is more to be done. And also the what can I say? This conversation of not getting career politicians, I think for me that is a win. I'm looking at Tshwane. Tshwane has went from a budget that was not funded to a funded budget. And who is the mayor? It's not a career politician. She's a scholar, she's an academic. She has a PhD and she wrote papers before, even maybe not even in her wildest dreams did she think one day she will actually be an executive, be the number one citizen. So she brings that academia thing, and she has done so much to save budgets from a council chamber that was not used. The city was renting and things like that. So I think for us, we need, they say where there is will, there is a way. And then you add that political will. Is there still will? Is there will? So the people that are not career politicians, I think they have a lot of will to get things done. And they somehow bypass a lot of the red tape, the patronage, and a lot of things. They just get things done. Once you have ambition and zeal for getting things done, one way or the other, you get things done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, so we've got one last comment is, let's say, reads, so far the discussion treats council and councillors as actors within systems of accountability and structure, but underplays patronage networks, procurement, politics, resource scarcity and fiscal crisis, or even the political uses of distribution, job standards, housing. This means councillors are not just failing, they're often embedded in survival networks. They often don't just respond to accountability, they respond to power, risk, and survival. And maybe one last comment to also wrap up is, what do you think also the light of this conversation and discussion will be the priorities for community organizations moving forward and also leading up to the elections? Yeah.
Thank you. Tozama?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I'm Tazama. I'm strategic advisor at Pari. I think one thing that we this oh, is it too soft? I'm Tazama Njobe, a strategic advisor at Pari. Work as a consultant here. I think one thing that wasn't quite tackled in this conversation is about the campaigns of civil society, what a campaign needs to look like. I think civil society is going to have to contend with itself if they want to do a campaign well. It's not going to be negotiation. We're not going to spend time and the ability to build consensus, messaging what it is that consortium is gathering for. So an example was water in this conversation. If that is what the coalition is about, then that's what the coalition is about. We're going to have to let go of everything else. And then inside of that, have a central pillar that runs a campaign. That will not be the type of building that civil society is used to. And if civil society cannot make that agreement, it's going to fall apart. That's one. Two,
is elections are won between, I mean, elections are won between, you know, the the election time, right? So I also believe, you know, it is March. It's slightly late, 6 months before an election. Campaign should have started 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because that also fills the gap of um, the piece around, you know, we know the high volume of counselors inside of, and we'll talk about institutional knowledge a little bit earlier on. That's the type of stuff you're doing in between the elections with the communities, right? This is the public education piece. I think some people may have spoken about civics here. You know, it's that sort of work, that building that happens in between. And then the other thing I think maybe would be useful inside of a sort of CSO type coalition from a campaign perspective is to think about, I think, look, one of the things that civil society loses first with funding crises is the communications capacity, right? And so even how CSO communicates is not necessarily aligned to how a campaign works. And so there's a need to build infrastructure around media training, around how to use media strategically, around messaging, around narratives, around storytelling. All of those pieces need to be built and then decentralized so that you have the mama who's running an ECD and a creche there in the middle of whatever, being able to advocate for, you know, water or whatever infrastructure it looks like at the time of forming council and IDPs and budgets, etc. So I think, I mean, I have many other ideas, but I think those are like the key ones that I'd like to put forward in terms of how civil society gathers around a campaign.
So, Peter, there is an offering, a campaign strategy offering. Okay, those were the last ones. So, panel, respond to those questions, but also your concluding remarks.
Yeah, I wanted to go first because I wanted to jump in straight where Dozama leaves us off, right? So you asked what are the things that are urgent and needed. I think for civil society to succeed in the electoral space, you need three things. One is that you need to build capacity. And by that, I mean the capacity of presumptive candidates and the kind of people, so that you're not only putting in somebody because they're a good organizer or because they're a good mobilizer, but because they would make a good candidate, they would make a good councillor, they would make a good presumptive mayor. And I think we need to invest in that. Sisnomsa, this goes to the point that you were making, though, right? I believe that one of the things we need to change about the way we think about representative politics and the representative is all a representative politician really is at its core is a political activist who has more teeth in their activism because they're inside the system, not outside the system. And I think when you separate those two things out, you then assume that immediately by being inside the system, you stop being an activist. It's an empowered activist that has more access to more information, to more budgets, to a vote, to a voice, not to discredit what happens outside in terms of the work that you need to do outside, but just the access. So Atolile Notuala in the city of Cape Town, activist for a good part of the last 15 years and has been a councillor for 2 years. Access said that he has learned more in less than 2 years of being a councillor about how to actually get things to move and what you actually protest for, what you actually do, than he could have ever done outside of the system. And so there's an empowerment that comes from being in the system. And especially as a councillor, as opposed to immediately saying you want to have a mayoral seat. I think there's something to that. And Dozama, that brings me to the point as well that you were making about infrastructure and all of those things. The second thing that we absolutely need to give to civics is infrastructure. electoral infrastructure, but post-electoral infrastructure as well. We need to be able to support people with infrastructure. The reason why people go into political parties, even though they become captors of those parties, is because those parties provide infrastructure. What would it look like to build infrastructure for people who are coming from and are accountable to those civic groups and to their communities rather than to their political parties? It takes an innovative approach to infrastructure and particularly the communications. So Tozama, I disagree with you on that it's too late, 6 months before an election. The only reason why is because the one thing that the Patriotic Alliance taught me is that local government elections are an ongoing activity because of by-elections. And so even if we use this as a catalyst, you are then setting people up to be able to contest by-elections when they come up in a much shorter space of time. A lot of civic groups, when they see a by-election, have less than 2 months to try and put a candidate through. But if we start building the infrastructure now, using this as a catalytic moment, even if you don't win the 2026 local government elections in the middle of December, which is when I think it will be, you are building infrastructure over a long period of time. And then the third point I want to make is about caucuses. Caucuses is the one thing that civil society has a strength in. We have a strength in mobilizing people and bringing people together, and in certain spaces, keeping those people connected over long periods of time. We need to use that. And I started off my intervention by talking about Trump. I'll end by talking about Zohan Mamdani. Mamdani also had the benefit of coming in as a non-politician in a time when politicians are not people's favorite people. But what gave him impetus was that he was able to go to the community networks that were already aligned with the message, aligned with the ideas that he had. And he was able to mobilize them into a ground force. By doing what? By creating some kind of consensus and caucus and network. If caucuses are what needed, the one thing that civil society can do is we can caucus. And I think we need to build into that a strength that we see. I've said that if Zohan Mamdani came and contested the city of Joburg this year, he would lose. And I say that because I do not think we are ready to go and press play on the different capacities we have in terms of communities and come up with 100,000 volunteers that could get a mayor elected. But I think we can build that capacity.
Yeah, I think Comrade Tessa has answered the question that have been asked. Mina, I will just keep on encouraging the civil society, Abu Peter Ganji, to go on with their campaign, because we don't have to fool each other, comrades. Is that the truth of the matter here is that the civil societies are the champions, and I believe that they can champion while they are there, as long as they are not going to go inside other political parties. And also, there's a different from these councillors from other political parties. Those are the deployees. They are not there to serve the people, but they are deployed by their organizations. Hence, they are not doing anything. I was so surprised when I was at the council around those years, finding out that our ward councillor don't even bother to read an agenda. You know, they don't even know what is in their agenda, you know, because they know that their mayoral committee are the ones that are going to read the agenda. They are the ones that are going to represent them. So with the civics, it's going to be different, because now they're going to look at the issues within those agendas and come up inside the council and raise those issues. So I believe in them, and also believe that they can make a difference. But they just need something like a pledge, a OKM, so that they can be held accountable also. Yes, the pledge. Actually, with the pledge, we're recalling, and we're obliged to attend each and every meeting that is happening within the community. Hence, I had to lead a march according to the city as the employee of the city. I was not supposed to lead that march. It led to my arrest. But because the pledge said to me, and I sign it, I'll lead each and every march that is coming into within my community. So I did that. So I think they just have to have something in writing that will make sure that they perform as councillors. They don't forget where they are coming from. They can still raise those critical issues within their communities into the council, no matter what. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I think we are entering into elections with a plan of winning the elections or to be the councillors and to represent our communities. However, if we didn't win, it doesn't mean it's a loss. For us, it's still a gain because elections also give us a chance to organize ourselves and mobilize our people towards a certain, vision or a goal. So that speaks to what comrade Lozama was saying. So our plan at the moment is that we will do what we can in our power, and if we lose the elections, for example, like in Freedom Park, if we lose, definitely we're going to contest that losing to say no, the elections were rigged because because we know, so
This is the MK Party of Freedom Park.
that's no, I mean, we shouldn't give the system, we shouldn't leave them to have a peaceful way of operating because we know their operation is not, i- they say our morale, their morale. They always have a certain way and interest and vis-a-vis ours. But then also we normally every year during the school reopening January, as Abahlali Base Freedom Park, we go to all the Freedom Park schools. We will divide ourselves according to the committees, block committees or street committees. So if you are next to this school, then we'll know that in Freedom High we have 20 comrades, and so many 20 comrades kanjalo, to go and assist to cover the books of the students, especially in primary school, but even high school we do that every year. And there is also issue of environmental issues where pick it up doesn't come to certain areas, especially where like it's more like informal settlement. So we will do those cleaning campaigns. However, the challenge is that whenever we do that, if it's towards elections like this, that program will be highly destabilized because EFF will come with a budget from Winnie Madikizela Mandela House, and it's a serious budget. So they will just come and they will hire TLBs. They will do something that we normally don't do because with us we just have a agreement with Pick It Up, and then they give us those what you call the refuse bag, and then we'll do with our hands and then they will just hire TLB, clean, very smooth, and thereafter they will go to have lunch and refreshments there, which is something that we don't. But for them, they do it just for these periods, and for us, it's not a problem, and it's not even a loss because that's where we know that we can sharpen the contradiction within the community to say no. I mean, we are the one that we are cleaning throughout the years and years, and then they will just come towards the elections. But we are also careful not to be people who are speaking against certain parties. If it's towards the elections, where we will be like, no, don't vote for this one. I mean, in that way, it's more like we are promoting them. So we just have to focus on ourselves. But yeah, what I will say is that we have high hopes that Comrade Simpiwo will be a councillor again this time.
Okay. No, thank you very much to the panel. Thanks very much to the participants. We've covered quite comprehensive ground. Obviously, not intensively in some areas. What I want to highlight as we conclude is the institutional memory question that came from the back. I think Tessa spoke to it by using the word infrastructure. The question which I think is important, not just for social movements, not just for civil society, but active citizens. How do we ensure that institutional memory is not just located in the local state? How do we make it public? How do we make it public property? How do we? I think that's a real question. Then the last issue, which we've not covered at all, you know, I'm chairing a roundtable in Johannesburg, but actually I'm a rural man from Kaiskamahuk. One of the issues that concern us in the former homelands is how this white paper process is actually getting the chieftaincy into the heart of local government in ways that can roll back local democracy, municipal democracy. I think that's an issue for discussion, and I think it's going to be addressed even more as we go into these local elections with this white paper review process. Sorry to leave that controversial question for the end, but I thought it's a topic for another part of discussion.
It
Thank
will
you very
be.
much, Federica.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks obviously to the chair and the speakers. And from Pari, I'd like also to thank Zane, Daniel, Mura, and Tokozo for helping out this morning to set everything up. And just for everybody, this seminar series will continue. So it was a great way to kick off the conversation today. On April 16th, we'll have Joburg Crisis Alliance speaking to us about their work and what they're doing. And following, we'll have other organizations as well. So watch this space. We'll send out a full calendar for the year. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for those online. Thanks.
Thank you. Federica, see, my email on the white paper. I've not received.